So I want to start from the very beginning, which is installing and opening up TE. How do we do that? So the first thing that we want to do is access your web browser, and this can be through any web browser, whether it be Firefox, Google Chrome, or Microsoft Edge. Any of those would suffice. Today, I would be using Google Chrome just for this training. So I'll open that up. The link is etestonline.org, but if I can just type in etest and let Google find that for me, that's another way in doing that. And it would be the first result that pops up. So I find that a lot easier sometimes if we can't remember the whole URL link. And so we can click on that first result. A lot of proctors, coordinators would familiarize themselves with this web page because it's where you would administer testings for your students. Not only that, it's where you can download the TE client. So it would be in the upper left-hand corner, and it's this blue button right here. If you click on that, it'll take about a minute or two to download and install. So this is the login page. I just want to backtrack here for a second. So once you download and install the TE client, it's going to look like this. It may look a little smaller on my end, but you're going to see the TE icon and the initials, and then like a white background in the back. So that's what it looks like. Once you download and install it, it's going to automatically be placed on your desktop. So going back to the login page now, this is where every time you open up TE, it's going to prompt you to enter your login credentials. Depending on where your agency location is, you can click on server. And if you're not in California or Washington or any of these other state agencies, it would be global. Today for this training, I'm going to use the Rolling Hills simulation. So I would highly recommend using this Rolling Hills simulation because it's definitely great for hands-on practice. And if you are a first-time user, you can go in there, you can delete records, update records, create records. I used this personally when I first started using TOPSpro, and it was just it did wonders for me just learning about the program. So I highly recommend using it. There is a document on how to access it, and it does require a unique set of logins. The agency ID number is 4908. And on that documentation, it's gonna tell you a user, but I'm using the administrator1 at rhas.org. The password would be admin. I'm gonna type that in, and then we're gonna connect. Any questions so far? It's just basic stuff here. Okay, so logging in right off the bat, we're gonna see a start page. So the start page is pretty much like your bulletin board. It's gonna have all the news pertaining to CASAS, any updates regarding TE. So you can see as some useful information here, any news or updates that you can just kind of look into. It will have how-to information here, and you're brand new to TE, I find this start page very useful. It has shortcuts. So definitely use it to your advantage, but you can always close it out if you're more experienced with TE and you just don't find it useful anymore. You can close that out. So a cool trick that the TE icon has is if you call tech support and you speak to myself or Martha, we ask for like an agency ID number the majority of the time, and you don't have it readily accessible. One way to find out what that is if you hover over this TE icon in the upper left-hand corner, you will find that right away. So if you just, again, I'll do that. If you hover over it, it'll pop up right away. So that's one way in finding out your agency ID number and the server you're connected to, which is the Rolling Hills agency ID number 4908. So that's a cool trick to use right there. If you click on the TE icon, you're gonna have a drop down, and there are some options here for you to click on. So the first option that we see is lock. So whenever you're taking a lunch break or just want to go out for a walk, if you want to just take a break from TE, but you also want to save your session, whatever you're doing on TE, you don't want to close it out completely, you would use the lock option here. So if you can see there, the login page will pop up, and then it's going to prompt you to log back in. And so you pick up right where you left off. So the next option I'll go over is the disconnect, self-explanatory there. If you just want to end your session and just disconnect from TE, you can click on that. Change password, if you ever want to just do that, you can do so. And it's going to ask you for an old password, and then for you to retype your new password. So you can always do that if you want. And the next option we'll look at is exit. Same thing, pretty self-explanatory there. If you want to close out TE completely, you can click on that. It will disconnect you and close out the program. So a couple of menus that I want to go over with TE. The view option at the top here, we have that start page again available. If we want to bring up that start page, we can click on that, and then we can exit out of it. You can always access that through the view option. And if the dashboard we don't really use, so I wouldn't worry about that too much. You can decrease the size of your options on TE. You click on small. You can make it normal size, enlarge it, and then there's a large option there. For this training, I'll leave it as normal. Organization. So we have submenus within menus also. So if you look at organization, there's a huge drop down, and then these arrows pointing to the right here, these are it's just indicating that there are submenus available, and you will see these with some of these options on organization. They just slide out to the right like that, and same with records. They just slide out to the right for some options available. Reports, there are a ton of reports in TE, so much that we have submenus within submenus. So most of these have some menus, but then if you look here, skills profile, which we'll go to in later on, it has a submenu itself. So there are a ton of reports in TE. Next up, I want to look at tools, the tools option. Just mainly wizards available. So wizards are, it gives you the step-by-step process of completing a task. So that's what wizards are. It's really convenient if you're trying to just finalize a task, and it'll take you through that step-by-step. So there's a couple of tools here that you can use. The help option, if you want to know any updates or look at the end user license agreement again or content, you can go in the help option. Okay, so the next topic I want to go into is how data is organized in TOPSpro Enterprise. If we can kind of dumb down TOPSpro Enterprise into how data and records are organized, it would be by organization and records. Organization can be thought of as your agency and what that comprises of, all of these right here. If we look at agency and then see what trickles down from there, we can look at sites and users within the agency and what role these users play in your agency, such as admins, teachers, or personnel. And lastly, classes. So remember, organization within TE can be thought of as the same as your agency. On the other side, we have records. We have, just like how agency is linked to organization, students are the main usage in records. As you can see here, any information that trickles down from there would be comprised of these student records, such as class enrollment and tests. You may or see this later on when you're using PE more, but it's the idea of the parent and child record. If you have a parent record, such as a student ID, the child record would be what is attached from that student demographic information. I actually like to share a diagram here. I really like this diagram. So this is actually, let me enlarge this a little bit. So if you take a look at this diagram, it pretty much conveys what I was just explaining. So this would be your parent record, and these are what trails out from here are your child records. So your test records would be considered your child record. Anything else, enrollment records, attendance records are your child records. The minimum requirement to make a student profile is your student ID, name, first name. We'll get into that more later on, but this is the main ingredient for a parent record. So that's the way these data are organized in TOPSpro Enterprise. Okay, switching gears now, I want to go into TE reports. So as I mentioned earlier, there are so many reports in TE. The hardest thing is to find that certain report that would fulfill what you're looking for. You know, if your supervisor is asking for a certain report, you know, what type of report would fulfill that goal or need. But other than that, you know, that if generating a report, which I'll go over, it's universal. So every report is pretty much the same in the steps that how we're gonna generate, and which is what we're gonna dive into. So for the simplification of this training, we're gonna stick with the individual skills profile. So it would be under reports, test results, skills profile, and individual skills profile. Okay, so right off the bat, we're gonna see the general settings page once we click on that certain report. At the top, we're gonna see the container. So the container is what, do you wanna take your data from the agency level, or you wanna take it from the site level? So if you wanna change that, you can. So you have your agency and then you have your site listed here. So you can change that if you like. But for this training, we'll stick to the agency. You have your generate button, and we'll click on that real soon. So your general settings page will have a section name. If you don't want to change the section name, you can leave it as the default here, but it has to have a name. So it is editable. So if you want to edit it, you can. So maybe we can change the name. And if you want to add a comment, you can. And this is for if you have a ton of reports, and if you're going to save this report, it is save this certain session, it's going to be under that name and comment. So it's easier for you to access later on once you have it saved. Common filters, we have program years. By default, it's current program year, but you can go back to 2016, 2017. If you just click on these check boxes here, we'll leave it as current program year for now. Programs, which program enrollment do you want to display on the report? We have basic skills, ABE, ESL, high school diploma, HSE. Or you can even pick the students who don't have a program enrollment too. If you click NA, for this training, we'll just stick with, we'll stick with ABE for now, and I'll generate a report soon. Class status, do you want your classes to be active, or do you want it to be completed or inactive? That's what these options are. We'll have it as NA for now. Date ranges, you have the ability to set a certain timeline for these reports that you're trying to gather. So you can set that. And the cool thing about this is that if you have a certain date in mind, and there's a drop down here, and the system actually sets the date for you. So if you want it for last week, it'll set that date for you right there. So it makes it really easy for you. Report sort order. This is gonna sort all the information on the page and then your report. So it would go by agency, program, so on and so forth here. Page sort order. The pages will be sorted by the modality, assessment date, or form. Report style option, this is where your color scheme, you can change that if you want. We have blue, I'll leave it as blue, but we can change it later on, and I'll show you what it looks like. Show NRS educational functioning levels legend. This is just like a box that shows the scale for the NRS level. We can look at that later on, but we'll leave that checked for now. Page orientation, we'll leave it as portrait, but you can change to landscape if you want. Content standards, we'll leave it as that, CCRS. Most of these, you would just leave it as default. Show grade level equivalent. I talked to a lot of customers, and this is something that they really like, and the report will show the grade equivalency. So I actually checked that off, and we could take a look at that. Special options, these are just targeting certain students. So if this is something that you're interested in and it pertains to you, you probably check these off. The majority of the time, we just have it not checked off. Exclude retested, we'll leave that checked for now. And predictor, you can change it to GED and high set, GED only, high set only, or none. We'll leave that as GED and high set for now. Warn if too many pages. So this, usually I believe the threshold is 500 pages. So I think above 500, there's like a warning page. And for good measures, because you would be stuck with a lot of reports that you would have to sort through. So a lot of times customers wouldn't know that there's so many reports, and until they hit that print button, it's going to say maybe 400 pages. So it's there for a good reason. So we'll have that checked for now. Include criteria info. We'll leave these for now. Include prepared by, just providing more information. Print time, a timestamp. Agency print option. This is default, so we'll leave it as that. ID and name. You can separate them by ID or name, or switch it around with name or ID. Student name format, first and last name, we'll leave it as that. Okay, just checking the chat, guys. Marina Norton, how can I add class ID to reports? We'll actually go through that later on, Marina. Okay, so I'm gonna hit generate right now. Oh, I believe there's a duplicate. Let me try that one more time. I'll do adjustment. There we go. Any questions so far, anyone? Okay, so this is the individual skills profile report. It looks like this. The individual skills shows the performance of the student who took which test that and modality that is displayed here. So the student Abi took the math test for form 038M on May 15th, 2021. Again, that filter was for last week. So it's going to show test that was for last week. Scale score, 221, NRS level 4, form level D. Total questions on this test was 36. Correct was 8. So the student, again, this is a raw score. So the raw score was 8. It doesn't really say it, but it's kind of implied right there with how many correct score questions answered. And then if we move down here, we have the different categories of how well the student did on these tests. For math competencies, we have the subjects such as consumer economics, and this end here, end column means how many questions were on that for that particular subject. So 22 questions were included with the consumer economics, and the student answered 18% correctly. And we look down here, math task, same thing here, different categories though. So it's charts, maps, consumer billings, matrices, graphs, tables. How many questions were pertaining to that? It's 16 questions. And how many were correct, which the student answered? 18% of them were correct. Same thing here with the CASAS math content standards. How many questions for number sense? 24, 12% correct. So that's what the individual skills profile displays. And if we scroll down here, we'll take a look at the legends that we were able to check off in the beginning. So that's what it looks like right there. And I forgot to do the grade equivalency, which is very useful. I'll try that again. There we go. So now we have the grade equivalency, 6.1. And I see your questions there, Melissa James. Thank you. Yeah, so once we check that off, it'll show right on the last ender here. Okay, any questions on that? Anyone? You're welcome, Melissa. Okay, moving on forth. So I see John's question here. Yes, you can actually print for a specific student. I will actually go into that in a few minutes here. Okay, John? Thank you. So how do we print out these reports, whether it be electronic form or in a paper copy form? So this is where this bar, it displays all those functions. To export, this is where you would export it in a PDF form. So if I click on that, it gives me the chance to do that. And by default, it would just select it as Adobe PDF. So you're exporting it as a PDF. Printing, you can print out all these pages again. You can actually just print out one page of this report. I believe you do it through this screen right here. So if you click pages, I believe it doesn't. I believe if you do one, it may just print out this page. But in the next few minutes, I'll show you guys how to do it by one student or by one particular information here. But you can print it out as a hard copy here. Layout settings, click on that. This takes you back to that last page we were looking at. And if we click on color scheme, we can actually change this. So this is just the same exact page, but maybe I want to change to green, and then I'll click apply. Takes a couple of seconds, and then it'll just switch the color scheme to green here. So that's the layout settings. It'll take you back to the previous general settings page. Fit page, pretty much self-explanatory there. It'll give you a bird's eye view of your whole report. Fit width, it'll set it to the whole width of your computer screen. Another thing, not to digress too much, but as you can see here, there's a green icon. So it stands out from all these because it's the one that's being activated right now. So fit width is being activated, and that green icon shows that. So we'll go into that more, but it's a little subtle, but it's very useful, and seeing whatever is activated currently in the background. 2 pages, you can see your other students on a 2-page screen if you want to do that. So you can check on that in multiple 2-page screens. If we click on the more, we have thumbnails. So we have miniature copies on the right side. These are other students, so you can access them like so on the right. Show summaries. So if we click on that, we can see what is clickable and what you can drill down into. So the information that you can drill down means that whatever you see on the report, you can actually see where it's originating from. And that's the drill down feature. Whatever you click on, it's just going to cut through all the layers of data and go to the origination of that data. And then you can make changes at that point once you drill down. It's a very easy way to kind of see your report and see where all that data is coming from. So this show summary is seeing where you can click on to drill down. Edit session, you can see here. You can go back to the initial page, and then you can make changes here. If you want to do that, click on more. Keep session, and I believe I mentioned this earlier, but if you keep session with the name, I didn't change it here, but you can save that session and then go back into that later on. So it would be actually under reports and then reports manager. And then this is the last session that was saved. If you change the name, you would actually see it here. I didn't change that name. I left it as a default name, but you can actually see it here and then go back into that session again. And that is keep session. So I just want to look at the chat right now. Okay, so that is generating the report. Next, I want to go into filtering out for specific students and the navigator bar for the reports. Just a little side note here for this pages on the right, this button will allow you to, and this would fill up very, very quickly with all these tabs at the top. You can actually instantly close all of them. I have two here, but you can actually close all of them by clicking this close all pages, and it's in the pages drop down here. So that's a cool trick there. But we'll go back into reports and then test results, skills profile, and individual skills profile. So now we'll go into the filters for the navigator. So all the data is all connected together. If we look at the navigator on the left side here, so to answer, I think one of John's question, and this may take a little explanation, but whatever is checked off right here for class definition is being shown on the report. So whichever class definition you want to be on the report, you can actually take it out or you can single them out. So if you want to do certain class definitions, you can. If you want, you can deselect all of them. And if you want to just single out for these particular classes for ABE testing, you can. So you can check these off if you want. Now keep in mind, all these other data, all these other categories right here on the left side are influenced by whatever you check off. So if you check off these class definitions only, and if you look at personnel, you know, which teachers are attached to those classes or which teachers are teaching those classes. So there's none, no teachers are teaching these class definitions. So that's how they are related together. So if you look at class instances are when these program classes when they take place. So there's one class instance from the selected class definition. Let's see if there's any students in any of these classes. So these are the students that took that class instance. So these are the students also here. So as you can see here, they all influence each other. So it matters by which one you check off and don't check off. But going back to isolating just for one student, I'll check off all of these classes for now. We'll go to in-program years. And let's just say I want to single out one student only. I'll deselect all of these students, and I just want to select this first top student here. So this is the only student I want to retrieve data from and as a report. And I'll click generate. And now we have that single student showing on the report, just this student on the individual skills profile. If we scroll down, we'll have some more information here, but it's no other students on this report. Okay, guys, any questions from there? I see Anna raise her hand. Go ahead, Anna.
Hi, good morning. I was noticing on this one, this report is missing again the grade equivalency. Can you show us again how to where to click so the grade will show up?
Oh yeah, I apologize about that. So it would be in this general settings. Thank you for pointing that out. So general settings, and then if we scroll down, and it would be this box right here. I'm not sure why it's not checked off by default. It's a very popular request. So, but we can always check that off if we want, and then we'll click generate. And there it is.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. you want to add anything, Janice, or we're good on this?
Oh, yes, very good. Thank you, Tyler.
All right. So we're moving past the TE reports now onto the next topic. Again, we'll close this out. Okay, so I want to start with the student demographic lister. So we'll access that through records, students, and then demographics. So in general, a lister looks like an Excel sheet, but it has columns. So it's going to show you all your students who are in the database. So this is what a lister looks like. We'll look at what is activated right now. Again, whatever is green, it means it's activated. So sort is activated right now, and the filter is activated. So we can click on sort and see what's sorted out right now. So student ID is sorted, and there's an arrow that points up. So what does that mean? So we can actually hover over that arrow, and it says sort ascending. So if you can take a look here now at the column, we're going to see that it's ascending. So the numerical order of it, it's going up. But if you scroll down, it's going up. So it's kind of contrasting. But we'll take a better look at an example in a bit. But you can see the student ID going up as it's ascending in numerical order here. If you want to change that, you can actually go back to sort and then flip it, and then now it's in descending order. As you hover over, it's going to display that information there. So that first student who had the lowest student ID number will be flipped all the way to the bottom now. But if you scroll up, there is a alpha character. So alpha characters are considered, I guess, higher up than the numeric characters. But if you take a look at this in general, it's going to go in descending order. As you go down, you're going to see it descending. Okay, so that's the sort function right there. You can actually add more sorting categories also. So we have one student ID that's being sorted right now. You can actually add by name also. So if you find full name right here, you can add it. So two sorts are going on right now. So it's being combined. So whatever a student ID is in the setting order, it's also going to sort it by name also. You can add a third one if you want to. So if you want, you can go into, let's say, birth date if you want. So you can go in order with that also. So there's three sort functions going on, and sorting by student ID, name, and birth date. Okay, so moving on from there, and we can remove this if we want. So we'll click on that and remove. I want to go over the filter function right here. So if we click on filter, and it's being activated right now with the green icon. So if we click on that, you can see it's filtered for current program year. And this is by default. A lot of customers call in, and this happens quite often. Customers call in and they create their student, and it goes into the database, but they can't seem to find their student on the list for some reason. And if you try to create another record, it's going to say this record is a duplicate, so you can't create it. So where is that record going, and how can we locate it? The answer to that is this filter. This filter is blocking any student that doesn't have current program year. So if you just create a student without any activity, this filter will block that out. And for good reasons, because this filter is implemented so that there are not, it's not showing students from years ago or students who were just created. So as you can see here, there's about 600 to 700 students. That's a lot already. So if you want to take out that filter, you're gonna have about 15,000 students right there. So that's a lot of students to go through, and some of those students, you may not even need to go through, but that is the filter, and it gets a lot of customers in trouble because it's blocking out students who don't have any activity. But you can also, there are more filters that you can add. So not just current program year, but you can add these other filters also. And you can connect them with some of these logic and or not. So that is the lister filter, but there is a column filter also. And we take a look at these column filters, and they're in a funnel icon. So if you click on it, and if you want to search a student by their ID, and if you have, let's say, a couple beginning numbers of that student ID, you can probably just find that student, and then it'll show up as on the lister here. But you can also do contains. So contains is if you know a few numbers in that student ID, you can click contains, and then it'll show up any results for that student ID. And also you can do this with the name too. So you can do what your student's name starts with or contains. So if you want, you can type in you have results on the lister here if you click on starts with or contains. So that's the column filters. You can find your students that way also. Okay, any questions here? I'm going to look at the chat. Does this show students active in the current program year, not your entire database? Yes, so the filter would show for the current program year only. So it wouldn't show for the entire database. So you have the filter on, it would show only students who are active for the current program year. Hope I answered your question. Any other questions, guys?
Hey, Tyler, in general, when agencies are looking at their data and they see something that either they wish wasn't there or that they would kind of like to delete it, in general, tech support, do you recommend that they call before deleting things just because of the cascading issue that can occur?
Yes, we highly recommend giving us a call in doing that. We actually advise not to delete any record, just because, yes, you're right, Janice, the cascading issue means that there are a lot of connected records and data with your student. So let's say if you want to delete the student right here, Tin, there are maybe test records with that student or class enrollments with that student. So we highly recommend against deleting any student data. But we also recommend giving us a phone call and seeing, if we can delete it or not.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks, Janice. Okay, so back to the columns, a little function that I'd like to show you guys. So you're not limited to all these columns that's available here. You can actually add more columns or take away columns that are being shown here. So if you actually place your mouse, and it matters where you place it, and then right click it, because that's where your columns will be placed. So for example, if you place it on name and then right click, you will have a ton of options to pick from. So these are all the options that that you can add. So if you want to add full first name, it'll pop up a column like that. And if you want to add a middle name, it'll pop up like that. And then last name. So now it's all separated. So you have your full name here, but then you have it separated by first, middle, and last name. So you can add all of these columns, more columns options available here if you right click on it. You can also hide a column if you don't need it anymore. Let's say name, you don't need it anymore. You can just right click on that and then hide full name. And you can actually switch these around. So you can switch if you want last name to be first. And if you see that really subtle purple line, that's where your column is going to be placed. And if you want to add middle to one more column over, you can. So you can move these columns around however you want to, you know, whatever suits you. If you like your lister like this, you can actually save it in what's called a schema. So in the more option right here on the far right, you have the schema option. If you click on that, and it's going to allow you to name your option. And then you can save it. So once you exit out and go back into records, students, demographics, and then open up that schema, which it is already. So you will see that it's all saved as what I just did. If you want to go back to default, you can. So this is the default right here. Okay, so just want to go over a demographic example from the lister. So you have your student listed here and you want to go into their profile. You can just double click on a student. Let's say Dina, you want to click on that student profile. What pops up is your student's demographic information. It's going to have the student ID, name, you know, basic information here, gender, birth date, age. And if you click on edit, you can actually change that. And we'll actually go over in a moment on making changes to these information here. But this is, again, going back to the parent and child record information. This is your minimum requirement. Your demographic is what gets that student into TOPSpro, and it's that student ID and name. From there, we have the navigator. Take a look on the left side. Just like the reports navigator, we have a list of all these child records in the navigator. And if you click on these are really a fast and easy way to access your students' child records, such as in-program years, student records, class enrollment, and class records. As you can see here, the student didn't enroll in any classes, class records, so no class hours logged in, program enrollment. The student was in career and technical education, program records. Let's see if there's any tests. So there's no test records here. But this is the navigator, and it allows you to access those child records in a fast and convenient way. We're going to go over how to edit these information manually. I'll pick a more active student here. So let's say, go with Sterling. So if you double click on a student, you can edit, as we saw earlier. If, let's say, your student logs in with and inputs their student ID, but later on you found out it's incorrect, you can always go back into TOPSpro and change it. So let's say if you want to delete the 7, you can. So you can always change that. If you want to change their name, you can. Birthday, social security number, you can add that if you want. More information here, you can add the education, ethnicity, you can add that information, address. And you want to make sure you click save. So we move on into in-program years. There's an in-program year record already. So if you want to make edits to this, you can double click on it. And then all of these you can edit. So there's a pencil icon here. You can open it up. And then you can add them, or you can make changes here. Back to that again with student records. Later on, we're going to show how to add a new record. The student doesn't have a student record, so we'll move on from that for now. The student attended some classes, and if you want to change any information in regards to that, you can. So you can click on the edit. You can add exited date or change the enter date. Class enrollments, it has class hours here, attendance hours. This is for this example, it's daily attendance, 4 hours on May 3rd. And if you want to change that, you can just double click into that record and then click the edit. And then if you want to change it to say 3 hours, you can click save. So now that change should have taken place. And there's that change right there. Program enrollments. There's no program enrollments, program records, no program records tests, no tests. And later on, we're gonna take a look into how we can add test records. Any questions? I'm gonna look at the chat. Anna asked if can instructor's name be added? Yes, we can add an instructor through the class definition. That will make sense more later on as we go through the classes. Thanks for that question, Anna. Any other questions, guys? Any questions? Janice, you want to add anything? Martha?
All good here. Thank you.
Yes, same here. All good. Thank you.
All right. All right. So I will now actually pass this later half of the training to Martha Perez. Martha, whenever you're ready, and thank you, everyone.
Hi, everyone. How are you doing? So we will continue with the second part of the training. I am going to go ahead and share my screen now. There we go. Can everybody see my TOPSpro Enterprise? Yes, you can type in the chat if you'd like.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. All right, so we are going to continue next with registering students and adding sites and adding a lot of other important information. But I just have a question for you. How do you collect student demographic information? How do you enter records into your database? Do you have like another attendance system that you normally use in your agency? And you can type in the chat box if you don't feel like speaking up. But yes, I see some responses here that you import. Some of you have some admission forms and different data collection systems, maybe Aries or other data collection systems, which is great. Once you have that database already in hand, you just grab those files or grab that information, that data from those attendance systems, and you would import it into TOPSpro Enterprise. That way you don't have to manually enter anything. You could still also review some of those imported demographics or imported information, but you already have like a lot of work that you don't have to do. But what happens when you don't have a third-party attendance system, or third party for us, but it's an attendance system? Well, you will have to manually create all those records in TOPSpro Enterprise. And I'm going to show you how to do it. Okay, so if you can see my screen here, I'm going to click here on the organization menu, which I always like to direct our new users or all our TOPSpro Enterprise users. You can go to organization agencies. So you can open up your organization agency's record, which is the Rolling Hills Adult School. In this case, we're using that. So double tap on that or double click on it, and it will open up the entire information. As you can see, it provides all the important information about our agency under the edit view. You have this navigator on the left-hand side, so you can navigate through the different sections that we have, which you're going to find sites. So under sites, you're going to find all the sites that we currently have set up in our database. You may have different campuses around your agency. So like in your agency, if you have like a South Campus or I don't know, Main Street campus, it can be a different campus as long as it has a different address. It is located in a totally different part of the city or in a different city, including you don't have to worry about that. You can create a separate site for each of those locations that you have. If you have different buildings within the same address, then that doesn't become a different site. That is considered being in the same address, same site, and you can also include several subsites if needed. So depending on your organization structure. So right now we currently have 8 sites. As you can see, you can look at this counter. You have 8 sites for the Rolling Hills database. And this information, you can also look at through organization and just directly click on sites. If we also do that, it's going to give us the same amount of sites and it's going to take us to the same sites lister. Okay. If you have any questions, feel free to type in the chat and we will address them a bit later. Sounds good. Now, once we have our list of sites here, and let's say we have a totally brand new site that just opened up, we are going to click on the Add a New button towards the upper left corner. It exists in the sites lister and also in the previous page that I was mentioning. When you open the agency's information in the sites section, you have this new button. So it's totally the same new button. So I'm going to go by this new button right here. And once we click on the new button, it opens up on edit mode. So it's ready for us to go ahead and enter our new site information. Usually you would like to continue carrying along with the site IDs list that you already have. And for that, I'm going to go back to our previous sites lister so I can see the site ID number. As you can see, it starts with an organized ordering like 0, 0, 0, 2, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3. So if you want to continue that same order, I see that there is another 99 site here by default testing session. So it depends on you whether you want to keep that same site ID numbering system or you want to continue with adding random new ID number. Or if that site already has like a specific ID, then you can continue doing that. So for this exercise, I'm just going to go ahead and continue with the site ID 06. And I'm just going to go ahead and enter my site's name. So the other sites, again, I'm going to have to go back to the sites lister. As you can see, it has the agency's acronym RHAS, that stands for Rolling Hills Adult School. So I also am going to keep that same structure, so it keeps uniform. So Rolling Hills Adult School, and I'm going to name this Southwestern Campus. So this would be my Southwestern campus. You have to definitely give it a name and a site ID. These are the minimum fields for you to save the record that you need to enter. So the time zone will be identifiable as by default. You don't have to set up anything in here unless you'd really have to change because it's in a different time zone. But it will identify the same one from your original agency ID, okay? This other option that we have here, which is the ETAS site, if you're going to be using, if by any chance you have ETAS online, you are using ETAS online on that site, then definitely by all means, go ahead and put a check mark in it so that that will recognize the site as being ready and identifiable for ETAS using ETAS online. Site contact. This is another part of, or another section of adding a site, which can be added. Like you would need to add, you can add the site first name, the person in charge of the site, which would be, I guess I can put myself as the person in charge. You can add an address, and you can add city, all these fields. But just to let you know, this is not a required field for you to save the record, although it is preferred. So once we have the information or basic information, I'll just go ahead and click on this save button. When I click on save, this navigator on the left-hand side will appear. So then once we have saved the information, we will see different other information settings like subsites that we can start creating subsites if that's the need for your agency, class definitions, class instances, and we can start registering students. But sometimes you can do this from a different kind of lister. So you don't have to stay along until in this navigator in order to do other or to enter other information. So any questions so far with adding a new site? I'm just going to go back to the other lister, and I see that I have entered the Southwestern campus, and I name myself here. It's an ETAS site, as you can see, is now included in the general sites lister, and then now it gives me 9 records. So let's see. Okay, so I see a question from Jade Wen. That lock, that caps lock, it stays like that because the settings under your information, under your login, they are set up by default. So you would need to click on the TE icon just really quick, and you go here into the options just for changing the caps, or just for changing your listers here. I have here on start, and actually go to edit view. So edit view, the edit view tab under the options will give you how to remember the last selected schema for fonts. So if you use proper, it will always capitalize like the first letter from the first word of a sentence after a dot. All uppercase will say all uppercase, and unchanged is the one that I normally use for if I want to capitalize something, then I can capitalize it. And if I don't want to, it won't. It will just stay unchanged like that. So I hope that helps. All right. Or if there's no more questions, oh, you're welcome. So moving along here, we're going to show you how to add new users. Oh, and by the way, I am going to type in the chat box how like documentation for steps to add site records. Let me go ahead and type that in really quick, which we just went through. And I am going to also paste another link to how to create classes, which we're going to go through right now. So when we go back to the organization menu, we can start adding new classes from here by clicking on classes and then definitions. The first thing we need to do is enter a class definition so we can later add a class instance to specify some information for the class definition. So first is to create a class definition, which we already have a long list of classes. As you can see this lister, we have over 2,700 classes. So first thing, it's to click on the new button, again, on the top left corner. And once you click on it, it will open up into an edit mode. So the first thing, as you can see, we have two sections in here where you can enter information. So the first thing we're going to do is click on this drop down arrow for sites, and then we are going to find our newestly created campus, which is the Southwestern 06 campus. I'll go ahead and select that because that is where I want to add my new class. All classes need to be added inside a site. They cannot be added at the agency level. So we will need to definitely select the site. Then once we select our site, we're going to start by entering the class ID number, which can be a generic number that you may get from your attendance system, or it could be something that you already have established, like class 101, or depends on your agency. Once you enter the class ID, you can add an extended ID if you'd like, which would be making it more unique. But this is not necessary at all. We have actually seen some disruptions with using extended IDs when you're importing. So we would like to leave that alone for now. A course code and a class description. These two, I'm sorry, the course code is something that you may already have established from your plans, from your classes, and it's not a required field for you to save the record manually. And then for class description, here is where I would enter ESL morning, or if you have the same ESL class that goes from morning and then you have another one at night, then this is how you can distinguish by describing your class as is ESL morning, or it can be ESL intermediate morning, for instance. Okay. So once you have entered a class description, this is how you normally recognize or know what the name of the class is. CIP code and A22 course codes are some codes provided by your state or by your organization. So depending on the class, if this is applicable, then you can go ahead and select it. But it is not necessary for you to enter the class or save it. So once I've entered my class ID, my class description, and selected a site, I'll go ahead and click on the Save button across the top. That way, it saves up my record. So once I save it, it's going to, again, give me this navigator on the left-hand side. And once we have that navigator open, I will immediately go ahead and click on Class Instances. I'll click on Class Instances so that I can create a new class instance for that definition. And of course, again, you will find that new button that you can click on and start entering the class instance information. So here you will furtherly apply more information upon your class definition by selecting the current program year. As you can see, a couple of fields in here are already pre-filled by default. So I'll go ahead and select the current program year. And as you notice, once you select the current program year, it automatically enters the start and end date of the class, which will be from the beginning of the year until the end of the program year, from July 1st to June 30th. So if you have a different time frame for your class, you can definitely are welcome to edit that. Let's say our class started on January 1st and it will end on June 30th, then I'll leave it like that. 21 of this year. So now, if this is an ESL class, by all means, go ahead and select the instructional program of ESL if that is applicable to your class. Some of you may have high school diploma or maybe basic skills, or depending on what program it applies to, go ahead and put a check mark in there. And if you have any other like special programs that are attached to the class, like corrections, or it depends on what type of facility you have the class on, then you can definitely go ahead and specify what special programs, if it has any transition focuses, and many other sections in here that you can provide any information like instructional setting, physical setting. If you have internet in the class, or if you have computers in the class, then definitely go ahead and enter as much information as possible, which is, again, not required for you to save the record. For you to save the record, it's just necessary to enter the program year and the class start and end date. And again, I want to clarify that adding classes or the use of classes is only specified for those agencies that have enhanced access. If you have basic access, then you won't probably have the classes option to be able to enter classes and add students to it and record attendance, which is a nice feature, but only reserved for the enhanced access users. Okay, so then we will continue looking down through all these options. As you can see, you can add as many information as you would like the intensity, like how many hours do you collect on these, how many hours is the duration in minutes, or even the schedule, like how many days it meets. Well, once you have entered all that information, again, go ahead and click on the Save button. So please take close attention here to the navigator. As soon as I click on the Save button, that's going to look different. So I'm saving it right now. And once I save it, it then opens up other sections for you to enter proper information. Like for instance, class enrollments, add attendance. Class records would show all the hours of instruction that you have already recorded for this class, for some students in the class. And if you click on tests, you'll also be able to see all the tests that the students that are enrolled in this class have taken so far. All right, any questions so far on how to create a class instance and a class definition? Okay, I will take that as a no. Then we are going to continue by adding a student demographic record. My coworker Tyler already touched a little bit on demographic records. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do a brand new student. So originally you go to records, students, and then demographics. When you click on the demographics icon or option, you're going to be populating a list of students that have activity during the current program year, as Tyler already mentioned. So this is a filter, is colored green because there is something active in this filter. So if you click on the green filter button, you're going to see the current program year. So, and you have other options by clicking on this filter drop down. You can see all students without, activity, with activity, or without activity. So you can also have that in mind. But by default, it's normally it's set up by default into the default filter, which contains the current program year. So, if I don't have my student that I need to enter, I don't have him in my database, I'll click on the new button on the top left corner, and that way it will open up on edit mode once again, so we can start entering our students' information. Minimum pieces to collect. Well, that really depends on you. If you report federal data, you of course definitely would need to collect at least some demographic information like date of birth or gender, and probably goals or any other demographic information that might be helpful for you to report your federal data. But in this case, I am going to enter any of an ID number, which is our actual tech support phone number, 1-800-255-1036. That is our, this would be my student ID. And I will go ahead and enter, sorry about that. Okay, here we go. First name would be Susie, last name, student. So you can go ahead and enter the first and last name of your student. Of course, you're welcome to enter as much demographic information as you can or as you have. Female or gender, I would enter the birth date. Then I would probably go back to 2000 on the same 20 here. And let's see if you have some scrolling bar. I have scrolling bars because the size of my monitor is a little bit tiny. I'm using my laptop, so and the view also is up to medium. So depending on your screen size, you can also unpin this navigator. So it gives you a little bit more space. As you can see, the navigator is just like hiding in here in the corner, but if you hover your mouse over it, it will retract back. And if you can pin it again, that's fine. So these are some options that you are also welcome to enter. As you can see, we have several options, but this can be a little bit overwhelming. So what I always like to do is you see these little buttons right here? They are to collapse the section. So there are different sections and they are all collapsible. So it doesn't become very overwhelming trying to enter all the information. So that way we will unhide section by section. So it's not that hard or overwhelming on all of us. So once I enter the date of birth, or even just student ID, first and last name, these are the minimum pieces of information that you can enter and then be able to save the record. But we're not going to do that just yet. So we'll just go through really quick all of the other sections, if you don't mind. And I will explain really quick. As you can see, these are options for you to enter high school diploma, or if you have any GED scores or any other HiSET scores, you're welcome to enter them. Ethnicity is a very important demographic field if you report again federal data. We'll uncollapse the next, which is address information for the student, as well as phone numbers, emails, very important in data collections. And last thing is consumer information. If they have any kind of disabilities or special needs, any other strengths or communication problems, then you can definitely go ahead and enter that in here. Once you've done entering all the demographic information that you have available for your student, then go ahead and click on the Save button. The Save button, let me go ahead and pin my navigator again. The navigator will populate next into the new student record. So I have a new student record, which is our 800 number, and I am now going to add a new test record for that student. So right now, when you save the information, the student demographic, she doesn't have any activity yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a student test record. So it creates activity in the current program year. Let's say you had a paper assessment that you would need to enter manually. Then go ahead and click on the test button from the navigator. But this is not the only area where you can enter test records. You can also go to records and then click on test and enter the new record for my student. Remember again, the issue with activity in the current program year, and I can go ahead and click on the new button from here on the top left corner and select the program year where that student tested. When we click on the drop-down arrow for the students testing in here, I will go ahead and click on the drop-down for student ID, and I'm going to type in my student ID number. And I'm just reviewing that from top area here. So Susie student pops up. I'll go ahead and select her. We have the option to select a class instance or not, but definitely an assessment date is needed. So I want to say that she tested on Monday, May the 3rd, and that way we can establish an assessment date for her. Adding site information, it's not critical. This is optional. If you want to mention what site that student tested, then go ahead, by all means do so. And if you don't, that's fine. It doesn't matter, or it doesn't affect her at all. Looking at the assessment type, you have several options here that are checked by default. I would just stick with the default because it's in general, these are most of the forms used by most of the agencies. In the form section next, I would click on the drop down, and there's going to be quite an extensive list of test records. But if you have the form number that you normally you gave to the student, it can be an 83R. So you can just start typing the numbers in that. So I'll just type 83. Okay, let's see. 901. It's not populating my list, so I will go ahead and click on, let me go back. Let me go back from here, cancel pick. So what I did, because it's not populating my forms, what I'm gonna do is click on this button that says select from lister. So it's not picking it up. And it looks like I have a filter embedded here by default. So I'll go ahead and remove that filter. And now go ahead and look through. Let me go back to cancel pick. Let me go back to my first original setting because it wasn't looking up my forms. Okay, let's see. Again, let me disable this filter. And then I am going to use these filter boxes in here, this filter for form. I'm going to say 83 and then click OK. So in reality, I wanted to say 083. So it picks up the reading, the life and work reading assessment level B. This is the one that I wanted to show. 083 is from the Life and Work Reading Series, which corresponds to the ESL approved assessments by the NRS. So that's why I wanted to choose that form. Once we choose the form number, I would go ahead and I have two options, either to enter each of the item responses that the student responded, like A, B, C, D. So you have multiple questions that you can enter all the responses manually if you have the paper assessment, or if you had already scored the test and you have the raw score, then you can by all means enter it manually by checking this box that says score override, and then go ahead and provide like the number of correct answers that the student responded to. So this assessment normally has 32 questions, and my student responded to 22 correct questions. So once you have entered the raw score, then go ahead and click on the save button on the top area. As soon as you click on the save button and this gets saved, the scale score will automatically populate in your test record. Any questions so far? Okay, I see a question from Chrissy. If a paper test isn't entered, would it mean the correct next test would be assigned if the student's e-test for the next test? Yes, yes. This is helpful if you have the student's test form. You can definitely manually enter it, and trust me, when you sit them down on the e-test computer, they will get their next assigned test because you have already entered it manually into TOPSpro Enterprise. As long as the student uses the same ID number, then they will get recognized as themselves once they enter their ID, and we'll present them with their next assigned test. And to prove that really quick, we can run a report, which is called the next assigned test report. And guess where it's going to be? In the reports menu, of course. Then we click on reports, CASAS test, the next assigned test, and it's going to give me this report setup navigator. I believe Tyler went over through the individual skills profile and showing you around. Again, this has a lot of options. You can also collapse them so you don't get overwhelmed with all of the information presented in there. But from the navigator on your left-hand side, if you want to generate the next assigned test report just for that individual student, you can click on the in-program years option from your report setup navigator on the left-hand side, and then look through all these columns. And we have, let's locate the student ID column. We're going to click on the filter button inside that student ID field, and then we're going to type in the student ID that was assigned to the student, and then click the OK button. Once the student names pop in there, I'll go ahead and say generate, and that is going to give me the next proper assigned test for your student. Okay, so we are actually almost about 12 o'clock. I'm just going to quickly show you how to export test records in the given case that you have to enter or import them into your attendance system. So this would be the next assigned test assigned to our SUSI student, which would be 084R. All right, folks. So really quick, if we go to the records menu and we click on tests, we will click on tests. This is going to give us the entire list of tests that we have given throughout this current program year. Because the Rolling Hills database is a large database, we have a lot of students. So over 17,000 test records we have given today or throughout the year. You can definitely export the entire list of records by clicking under the More button and then clicking on the Export button. You can definitely do that. When you click the export button, it's going to give you different options like third-party test data or old WIA third-party test records. We normally advise to do the WIOA third-party test data. So that creates a CSV file and that you'll be able to grab onto that file and enter it into TOPSpro Enterprise, into your other attendance system. Okay, once you do that, you would, of course, select an area in your computer where you want to save it, whether your documents or your desktop, and that way it will do a comma separated values, which is a CSV file that you'll need to enter into your attendance system. Okay, once you do that, it will save a file on your computer.